Welcome to SuicideFantasyFootball.com. We are telling you now the wide receivers that you should add if you need to fill in a spot on your fantasy football team.
Wide receivers are always a little easier to add. There's so many of them.
Yep.
You got a lot of chances to get somebody, especially week 1, week 2, somebody that could really make a serious impact on your football team for this year.
And Jim, I'm a big fan of guys who finish a season strong.
I thought you were going to say you're a big fan of guys.
Oh, I could have just stopped there.
Nice.
I'm a big fan of guys who finish the season strong and then start off showing that it wasn't a
fluke, you know? There you go. They get a
And
little
Jordy
bit of
Nelson.
a rapport with their quarterback.
Jordy Nelson, to me, is the guy who's going to be the number 2 in Green Bay. It's not going to be Donald Driver. He's old. It's not going to be Randall Tex Cobb. It might be that he's the 3rd guy, but he's not taking over
Getting
Jordy
James
Nelson.
Jones just right out of there? He's not even...
James Jones.
Come on.
No way.
Okay.
All right, who's your guy you're adding, Jim? Number 1.
Number 1 right now, because I don't know that Marcus Colson's going to come back. And even if he does come back, it's a collarbone. He can be one hit now, just like Peyton Manning. So I'm going Devery Henderson. Robert Meacham's probably picked in your league, but Devery Henderson is a deep threat, especially if you get extra points for length of touchdowns. Devery Henderson is somebody I'd be definitely looking at this week.
It. Early Doucette's my next guy. And I don't think he's a stud, but he proved last week that he can be the number 2 guy in an offense that could put up good numbers, especially as Kevin Cobb gets more comfortable. And Fitz is always going to be double-teamed, and you're going to see Early Doucette putting up some decent games.
Yeah, and the next guy's a name that you heard before. Steve Smith of the Carolina Panthers.
How is he not like number 1?
Well, somebody like
he's
you
the
said,
number 1 wide receiver.
Sure.
On an offense that could be a pretty decent offense.
But a lot of people didn't draft him. I know a lot of leagues he went undrafted, especially in 10-team leagues or something like that.
10-team leagues.
You didn't think either Jimmy Clausen nor Cam Newton was going to get him the ball. And Steve Smith hasn't done anything over the past 2 or 3 years to make him anybody who's worth really
Since
picking.
Jake Delhomme, he hasn't really done much.
And even the last year with Delhomme, he didn't do much except for a fight on the sideline. So I think that he might be available. There's a good shot. If he's definitely there, I would pick him up right away.
All right, here's a name you don't hear a lot, but now that Danny Amendola is out at least for a good portion of the season, Brandon Gibson. He's a guy that we've watched at Eagles camp since we drafted him. UNLV?
Washington State.
Brandon Gibson looked great as a rookie. I was sad to see him go to St. Louis. We got a scrub
Will
Witherspoon for him, and I was bummed when we did it, and I'm still bummed because I think Brandon Gibson is going to be a number 2 wide receiver for a long time in the NFL, and I think he's going to be the number 1 guy. I don't think it's going to be Mike Sims-Walker. He's a bum.
He's a little bit better than Jason Avant. Let's not go crazy here.
That.
Let's not go crazy here.
I think he's going to be a number 2, number 3 guy on your fantasy football team for most of this season.
Here's the reality of the situation.
Go ahead.
He's a wide receiver that's going to play, and he's in Josh McDaniels' offense, who's going to throw the ball all over the place. Bradford's got talent, whether he's got a little bit of nerve damage or not. They're going to throw the ball down there, and they got to throw it to somebody. The little white guy's out. You got to go with the second best pick.
All right. I don't disagree.
I got to speak English. Here you go.
All right, check us out. Suicide Fantasy Football on Facebook, SFFcom on Twitter, and Blog Talk Radio Wednesday night, 7:30 to 8:30, Fantasy Football Overload.